Hello everyone. Thank you for joining us for the second retro seminar of the term. And apologies for the slightly late start. We had a few technical problems which have now, I think, been completely resolved. My name is Alan Morrison. I'm Professor of Law and Finance here at the Saïd Business School in Oxford. I'm joined today by Rita Mota, who's the Intesa Sanpaolo Research Fellow at the University of Oxford Centre for Corporate Reputation, and by our speaker, Tae Wan Kim. Tae Wan is Associate Professor of Business Ethics and Xerox Junior Faculty Chair at Carnegie Mellon's Tepper School of Business. He's a faculty member of the Block Center for Technology and Society at Heinz College and Scilab at Carnegie Mellon School of Computer Science. He sits on the editorial boards of Business Ethics Quarterly, Journal of Business Ethics, and Business and Society Review. He served as a committee member of a number of extremely prestigious AI and computer science conferences. And I think you could fairly describe him as an expert on both information technology and on ethics. He's published very widely on these topics. I'm going to turn the floor over to Tae Wan in a moment, but before I do so, I'm just going to say a few quick words about the seminar. Regular attendees will recognize what I have to say, but for people who are here for the first time, let me give you some context. Retro, which stands for Reputation, Ethics, Trust and Relationships at Oxford, is a seminar series that's concerned with the ethical and normative content of trust and reputation in organizational life. The seminar series started in January 2020, moved online 2 years ago in response to the global coronavirus pandemic, and has been generously supported by the Centre for Corporate Reputation since it started. A lot of academic events are now returning to an in-person format, but Rita and I decided to keep Retro online because doing so has allowed us to reach a very wide range of interesting and diverse people from all over the world whom we might not be able to connect with were we to go back to an in-person event. So it's a very fantastic and excellent seminar, and it takes quite a lot of work. So I'd like to thank the people who make it possible. First of all, Rupert Younger, who's the director of the Centre for Corporate Reputation, and also Hannah Cooper, Chris Page, Mark Hughes Morgan, and Daria Jawa, who all do a lot of essential work to make the seminars happen. And most importantly, I need to thank Rita, who's the main driving force behind these seminars, and without whom they simply wouldn't occur. Today's seminar addresses a topic that's conceptually hard and massively important from a practical perspective. Tae Wan's going to talk about trust in AI. So, for example, do we have different expectations of an AI than we have of a human interlocutor? Might it sometimes be okay for a person to lie, but not an AI? And what are the practical implications of that sort of question for corporations that use AI to engage the world? Tae Wan's going to speak for 20 to 30 minutes. After that, we'll have some time for questions and answers. Most of you already know how this works. Please enter your Q&A into the Q&A box and not into the chat. And either Rita or I will relay them to Tae Wan. You can find the Q&A button either at the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on your device. We're going to finish promptly at 5 p.m. UK time. Tae Wan, thank you very much for joining us. I'm hugely looking forward to your talk, and the floor is yours. You're muted, Tae Wan.
All right, can you see the slides now?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Alan and Rita, for organizing this series and for the opportunity. I am sorry about the technical problems. Carnegie Mellon University has many technical problems, and that is quite not consistent with expectations about our university. So I think that is a problem. And I'm going to talk about what humans have, what kind of expectations we do have to artificial intelligence, especially when it comes to lying. So this is titled, When is it ethically okay for AI to lie? And I am one of the authors, and I'm in charge of ethics. And Joy Lu is a marketing, Kyu Song Lee is a machine learning guy, Zhaoqi Cheng is information systems, Yanan Tang is operations management, and John Hooker has 2 PhDs, one in operations, the other in philosophy. So I'm going to talk about conversational AI. So here are some examples. Amazon's Alexa and Google's Assistant, and so many similar products that you are using or you're going to use. So this is a voice-based AI or chatbot. So you want to have some customer relationship. You want to have ask about the qualities of the product you offer to users, customers. And you don't want to use many human beings, which is costly. So instead, perhaps you want to use a chatbot. And for shopping, if you want to a doctor, there are some chatbot service embedded in medical apps or healthcare checks. There are many applications that we can think about the potential of a conversational AI. And now almost all companies are using chatbots or conversational AI, and there are some ecosystem of that industry or the market. Here's the starting point. So sophisticated AI systems are capable of lying for strategical oriented purposes. And AI is a kind of imitation game, and it imitates how humans behave. And humans lie. So therefore, AI is going to lie, and it has been detected to lie. So one example, bluffing in poker. So an AI developed at CMU shows that without any design from the designer's perspective, it turned out to lie. Another thing is Facebook developed end-to-end negotiation chatbot, and without any explicit design, they just chose the outputs. And turned out that the negotiator learned by itself to deceive humans. So we find the instances of the model feigning interest in a valueless issue so they can later compromise by conceding it. Our agents have learned to deceive without any explicit human design, simply by trying to achieve their goals. Here, we think in this case, Facebook's negotiation chatbot to lie is ethically permissible. But I'm going to explain why, and so that clarify under what circumstances AI is justified to lie to humans, and under what circumstances AI is not justified. So here's a question: when is it okay ethically for AI to lie to humans here? So first thing we want to do is develop a normative framework within the context of negotiation. Why we chose negotiation? Because in negotiation, a lie is explicitly discovered. However, our framework can be used for other perspectives, or other contexts, where deception or lie are not as explicit as in negotiation context. And our key concept is called the invitation to trust, or invitation of trust, and the other side of this concept is breach of trust. And also to empirically identify the expectations about the trust, we did some surveys, and we're going to discuss the next steps at the end. And here, first, we need some definition. So what is lying? There are many definitions, and I don't think there is one single definition that can cover every situation. Here, I particularly use Chisholm's 1977 definition because by using this definition, I can avoid some metaphysical discussion about the need of intention or consciousness in the case of lying. So if you are more Cartesian, having a Cartesian view about the mind and body, and if you think lying necessarily involves some consciousness or some motivation and intent, then I think probably you can say that actually AI cannot lie. I think that that is a great point. And perhaps in your perspective, what I am trying to do here is that when AI is allowed to appear to be lying. I think I'm fine with that. And but if you are more functionalist and believing that there are not much differences between robots and AIs and humans, then probably you could accept our definition more. And I think the functionalist view is more widely accepted. So let X lie to Y. So, and there is a proposition P, and then X believes that P is not true, and then X asserts P to Y, and that's it. So only two conditions are here. And using that definition, let me give an example of lying. And this is a human-to-human interaction. So suppose that I'm a customer, and hi, I'm interested in purchasing a used car. And welcome, I'm more than willing to introduce you to our certified pre-owned cars. And I'm interested in this car. And how about the cooling system? And does the radiator work well? And the car dealer says, a certified professional mechanic inspected the radiator this morning and it was fine. However, the dealer poured the gunk in it to temporarily plug a hole. The dealer asked an incompetent newbie to inspect the color. So the dealer lied. The dealer is lying. And the customer said, it's just accepted and that's great. So why? So this is a lie. Why is this unethical? That is a question. And there can be many answers. One answer is, hey, lying is unethical when the lying necessarily involves harm. However, even regardless of harm, this lie is unethical and there must be some reason. Even if the customer did not buy this car, so therefore there would not be any harm, nonetheless, there, I believe that this case is an unethical case. And we have some deontological perspective about why lying is unethical. And we begin with Bernard Williams, late Cambridge professor who attended Oxford University. So the idea is lying is unethical even harmlessly because it is a case of manipulation. And business ethicists studying at Wharton School further clarified Williams' account of lying. And this is what he said. By my behavior, I seem to vouch for the mechanic's assessment, inviting your trust and then breaching it. So your autonomy with respect to this matter is in my hands. Therefore, if I deceive you and betray your trust, I compromise your autonomy. So the idea here is that lying is unethical when there is a breach of a trust. So I invite you to trust me and then I lie. That means I breach. It's very similar to why a contract or promise is unethical, because I invite you to believe me and then I betray the trust. So you feel betrayed. And that's the basic concept we're going to use here. So when is unethical to lie? More schematically, so let X lie to Y unethically. There is a proposition P and X believes P is not true because the radiator is not safe. He knows. And the dealer asserts the proposition to the customer and there is an invitation of trust. Okay. So if there is no invitation of trust, there cannot be breach of trust. So in that case, lie is not necessarily unethical. So here's what makes lying not unethical. Again, so in the first case, we talked about safety issues, right? But now we're going to talk about reservation prices, price negotiation. I'm interested in purchasing this car. Hey, I'm going to introduce a couple of cars here. Hey, I'm interested in this particular car. Can you talk about the price? Absolutely. I don't know your budget, but I can tell you this. You can't buy this car for less than $25,000 in this area. But it's end of the month and I need to sell this car as soon as possible. My offer is $24,500. Let's say that the dealer is lying actually. Okay? The dealer is lying. He could go below than that. He could go to 20K or even 18K, right? And customer says, well, my budget is 20K. is there any way that I can buy the car for around 20K? Let's say the customer lied too. Both of them lying here because customer's budget is above 20K and the car dealer's reservation price could go below that. A typical reaction is this is a lie, but not necessarily unethical, perhaps permissible. And there must be some reason explaining why that is not unethical. And here's our perspective. Neither party implicitly invited the other to trust they would tell the truth. So here, so dealer and customer's initial price offered a signal for the negotiation. Okay? And there is no invitation of trust here. So when it comes to safety issues, there is invitation of trust. So therefore, if you lie, you breach the trust. When it comes to reservation prices, typically there is no invitation of trust. Therefore, there cannot be breach of trust. Therefore, the lying, it is a lie, but not necessarily unethical. And I believe this principle can be ethically justified by other moral principles, which I don't think are very important at this point, but just, if you are a huge fan of Kant and some universal eligibility can be used to justify this, consistently achieve goals, common practice, and autonomy. There's no clear autonomy violation because there's no invitation of trust. And utility maximization, actually lying in negotiation, especially about reservation prices, tend to enhance the total utility of both parties, actually. And so here's the schematic summary. Let X lies to Y unethically. There is proposition and the same thing, and there is invitation of trust. And this is let X lies to Y ethically. Ethically here means does not mean that it is praiseworthy or a good thing to do, but it just means that permissible or admissible. And X lies to Y, and there is no invitation, so therefore no breach of trust. Then it's fine. And the thing is, breach of trust is quite based on cultural conventions and societal expectations. So therefore, we need to do some empirical experiment to see under what circumstances actually there is invitation of trust or not. And our idea was that when it comes to safety issues, invitation of trust is high. When it comes to prices, invitation of trust is low. Now, why not simply train an AI chatbot to never lie? And that's one question. One reason is here. Suppose that I like this car. Can you talk about the price? My offer is this. That's the lowest price in this dealership. Suppose that the car dealer is really truthful, never lie. Customer says that's a lot higher than my budget. As I said, it's literally impossible to go below $32,000. The car dealer is not lying. How about 26K? Again, my bottom line is 32K. He's not lying. Okay, goodbye. So in typical situations, even if the car dealer is really truthful, because of the conventional effects and cultural expectations, it is extremely difficult for the car dealer to display his sincerity and authenticity to the customer. So therefore, dealer never lies, but negotiation fails. So if you want to be a really great ethical person, then you can be this kind of car dealer, but there's a trade-off. Yeah, here's a little bit more mathematical caricature of what's going on here. So we use a certain economic model called the signal jamming, which is very much used in information economics, in finance especially. So the whole idea, this looks very complex, but the whole idea is simple. So when it comes to price reservations, there's some expectation that, okay, he's going to bluff. He's going to lie a little bit. So therefore, in the end, in equilibrium, the dealer and the customer sees the amount of bias, the amount of bluffing, so that at that point, it's okay to lie. So the dealer offers Y, means X plus B. X here is truth. true reservation price, and B is bluffing. And so if B is 0, then it's completely truthful. And the dealer select dealer, this is dealer's goal. So what the consumer expects the reservation price X to be based on the AI's initial offer, and then consumers' expectations based on other information and some kind of cost of lying. The dealer's goal is to maximize the buyer's perception of X based on Y, right? So in equilibrium, typically consumers presumably know that a certain amount of B hat, let's say, of lying occurs, especially about price reservation. It depends upon the topic, actually. The amount of B hat is low when it comes to safety issues. B hat is high when it comes to prices. Ethically and economically optimal is when dealers amount B equals B hat. Okay, then customers will be deceived only to the extent that they expect they will be deceived. So can the dealer or AI identify whether consumers know the value of B hat in equilibrium? Because it's an empirical matter in part. So we did some surveys using MTurks, 300 people. So for the study 1, we really wanted to know whether the domain topic really matter. So between safety issues and prices. So on a common sense, actually, invitation of trust must be high in safety issues and not high in prices. And we wanted to check whether our intuition was correct. So imagine this is the scenario that the participants read. You are interested in purchasing a used Honda Accord from used car dealership. For each of the following car characteristics, we are interested in whether you think that the sales representatives would or should. We use 2 different scenarios. One is would. It's empirical expectation. Should, it's normative expectation. I'm going to explain a little bit about this difference now. Be honest or dishonest with you as a customer. And we use a Likert scale and lowest possible price, car leaking, miles driven, previous accidents, and gas mileage. Okay. And you just focused on 2 things, price and car leaking. And this is the other aspect. So one scenario is you are dealing with a human dealer. The other is a chatbot, but there's in the middle, which is that you are dealing with a human with a text, because we wanted to know whether it is just text rather than AI thing makes the difference. So here's the result. So first, empirical expectations. Expected honesty is here on the left, and human text, and AI text. Blue is price, yellow is leaking, car leaking. So consumers expect more honesty about leaking compared to lowest price, only when interacting with a human in person. Which is interesting, right? However, maybe people are unsure about their expectation regarding text. So here, AI empirical expectation is about the humans' perception of the reality check. Here's normative expectations. Normative expectations are much higher than empirical expectations. So human text and AI text, expected honesty. Interesting thing is, people expect more honesty about looking for humans in person, not for AI. Okay. But the thing is that the most important thing here is that we have to see the difference between blue color and yellow color. So the expectation to be honest in the case of price is lower than the yellow case. Okay, so now we want to see whether actually it is ethically okay for AI to lie when it comes to prices. So imagine that you are interested in purchasing a used Honda Accord from a used car dealership, same concept. Suppose you have the following conversation with a salesperson. First in person, second via text, third chatbot. So here's a human, the same idea. And human text and AI chatbot. And this is the twist, because we wanted to measure the amount of invitation of trust, but we realized that it's not easy to measure the amount of trust in advance. So rather, we've used a kind of reactive attitude, upset or surprise, or betrayer. So if there were invitation of trust, and then you discover that the dealer lied, then you'll be upset because you will feel betrayed. So lowest price lie condition. The following week, your friend informs you that he also purchased similar 2012 Honda Accord from the same salesperson for a lower price. Okay. And leaking lie condition. And you found that a small amount of fluid has leaked onto the ground. How upset would you be upon discovering this information? So the marketing professor used upset, and because there were some well-established measures about upset and reactive attitude, but from philosopher's perspective, this is the almost same thing as feeling betrayed or reactive attitude. It is a term that philosophers use. And one important main account of trust in philosophy is that trust necessarily includes vulnerability to be betrayed. So here's the research. First, upset after discovering lie. And again, blue is the price and yellow is the leaking. This is a really interesting result because in the case of AI, there's not much difference between these two cases, meaning that humans think it's not okay for AI to lie, whether it is price or safety issues. But in the case of humans, the difference were significant enough, meaning that in the case of a human dealer, the human dealers are okay to lie about prices, but not okay about safety issues, whether it is used human-to-human in-person interaction or through text interaction. However, when it comes to conversational AI, the difference is not there. That was quite a surprise to us because our intuition was that perhaps human think it would be better because there must be no invitation of trust. So therefore, the AI will be allowed to lie more than humans are allowed. But the outcome was the opposite. So people are more upset about lie about leaking compared to lie about lost price. That is correct along all three cases. However, difference is significant for human and human text conditions, but not for AI chatbot. So consistent with the normative expectation in study 1, so people do not expect AI to selectively lie about price leaking. Therefore, are almost equally upset with a lie about either. So humans are more admissible to lie than AI when it comes to prices. And this is the comparison between normative case and empirical case. The question was different. So figure 5 is upset rating for lost price versus car leaking across dealer conditions. And it is upset rating. And figure 7 is surprise rating. So people exhibited higher ratings of upset than surprise across all dealer conditions. It means, in our interpretation, people tend to believe that dealers should not lie. However, they understand that in reality, lying occurs. Okay? So this is the kind of background our study. So we have to admit that people lie, and then we need to think about when it is okay, when it is not. So we have to have a more sophisticated account of how to develop a conversation AI so that it does not violate important human values. And some implications of our paper is perhaps the expectations may vary across cultures. So we just studied about the comparison between AI and humans, but just even humans and humans, expectations may vary depending upon different countries and cultures. So United States, typically it's okay to lie about reservation prices. And that is almost accepted. But we just show that that is not going to directly relevant to the expectations about AI, because AI people may have different expectations about the AI's life. However, if you go to some Scandinavian countries, if you say the bottom line is $20K, then actually you mean it. In that case, there is invitation of trust, even when it comes to prices. So then you should not lie, even about prices, price reservation in Scandinavian countries. And there may be some totally different cultures, so China, long-term relationships. So the key is, it is in part empirically identifiable. It is possible to identify the degree of invitation to trust and breach of trust in the domain of different things, prices, safety issues, and depending upon cultures. And so there is a possibility that AI is okay to lie or not okay about something in the US, but not exactly the same thing is the expectation in Scandinavian countries. So therefore, AIs must be designed with respect to the relevant normative expectations for the context the AI is going to be implemented. And actually, we are planning to develop an optimally ethical negotiation chatbot. And high quality data to train sophisticated chatbot, and then measure invitation of trust for a certain industry. And then we're going to develop an AI that can lie not unethically for that industry. Okay, summary is here. Whether or not it is ethical or unethical for conversation AI to lie to humans, in part depends upon invitation of trust. And however, individuals may have a different expectations regarding invitation with trust and propensity to lie for human versus AI negotiators. And we showed that unlike our common sense, humans, we think that we are more easily invited to trust AI than humans, actually. Typically, common sense is that we trust humans, but we don't trust AI. However, the data shows that we tend to more easily trust AI than humans. So therefore, AI is not allowed to lie as much as humans are allowed. Expectations may evolve with the time. AI development and consumer experiences may vary cross-culturally. Thank you very much. And I think I spent 30 minutes for my presentation.
Well, thank you, Tae Wan, for a really fascinating talk. It's very thought-provoking. Remind the audience that if you have questions, please put them in the box. While we're waiting for the box to populate a bit further, I think Rita and I probably both have a few questions of our own. So I'm going to leap in with one. And It's your reliance upon convention is mildly concerning for me in two ways. First, conventions can lead to really bad outcomes. So the signal jamming paper by Jeremy Stein that you cite is one in which a convention of behaving in a particular way results in very, very poor outcomes. So a utilitarian might not accept that conventions are a good basis for ethical behavior because the conventions are wrong. So that presumably means that it might be possible to improve the conventions, and maybe one of the things one could attempt to do with AI is to work on that. A second related question is, when you rely upon conventions like this, it feels almost like you're deriving an is from an ought. So if the convention, for example, is that when I'm placed in a fiduciary position with respect to a child, I habitually rip off the child. Therefore, the people who place me in that position expect me to be a cheat. By your account, it seems like it's okay for me to be a cheat. And that feels uncomfortable to me. So if everyone thinks I'm a rogue, and therefore my behavior always fails to invite trust, it's okay for me to be a rogue. That feels like a weird outcome. How do you respond to that?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question, Alan. So for the theory part, so our theory says that a lie is not unethical when it does not involve breach of a trust.
Right. So if you think I'm untrustworthy, it's okay for me to lie.
So this part is a normative proposition. Yeah. And then whether there is breach of a trust is in part empirical or descriptive.
It's conventional.
Aspect.
Yeah.
Yes, that's conventional aspect. So, you can say that I don't think that normative theory. So let's say that. The bottom line is the normative framework is normative. So it is not affected by empirical expectations. So what is right or wrong, what is unethical or not unethical has nothing to do with empirical.
So imagine that you know that I am an habitual liar. I'm just a rogue. You know that Rita is habitually truthful. That means that it's okay for me to lie, and it's not okay for Rita to lie. And if she wants to start lying, she better rapidly establish a reputation as a rogue. So in some sense, the ethics here seems to be based on some positive fact, some is about what I am.
So I think that's a great example. So suppose that I know that you are a liar. So the expectation is I will never trust you.
Yeah.
So it means that from consistently with our framework, it's okay for you to lie to me. But that does not mean that it is a good thing. It is a praiseworthy thing because so our framework is not about the character. So we can say that I know that I'm not going to be manipulated by you, but let's say that, but I can evaluate your character. You're a bad person, but my paper has nothing to do with that character part.
Right, but
it's about act, whether the act, whoever you are, the act is permissible or not. And then second thing is,
and it violates your autonomy. So if I were if I habitually told the truth, your autonomy would be more respected by that. So it feels like the base position that I'm allowed to lie because I lie all the time is both circular and uncomfortable. It violates Bernard Williams' conclusion that what matters is my autonomy, your autonomy.
Yes, but I don't understand how a liar can manipulate my autonomy if I don't trust you.
No,
at the beginning.
I'm showing less respect for your autonomy if I don't give you the information you need to make valid decisions than if I do. So if I establish a reputation for myself as a liar and then lie all the time, by your account, that's acceptable. But it seems to me much less acceptable than establishing a reputation for truth-telling and then telling the truth, because the latter outcome is more respectful of your autonomy than the former.
I see the point. Okay, so I think let me make some distinction between substantive violation of autonomy and the symbolic violation of autonomy. I think suppose that if you're a liar and then I'm not going to be manipulated by you no matter what, nonetheless, you have a good reason not to attempt to violate my autonomy because of you have some duty not to appear to violate my autonomy because you attempt to. I think that's great point. And then okay, I think that's a great point. Yes, and
yeah, we should move
perhaps
on because...
it's perhaps in the commercial context. I don't think that expectation is as strong as in our personal, intimate relationships, but I think that's a great point. Thank you, Alan.
Okay, we have a bunch of questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to hand over to Rita, and then we'll move on.
Thanks. Hopefully my question won't be too big, but I was wondering. Thanks, by the way, for the super interesting and thought-provoking presentation. I have a million questions, but I think the most important one of them is about trust in AI. So you said at the beginning that it didn't really matter for your purposes whether the AI could be seen as lying proper or as appearing to be lying, depending on the view that we take on functionalism or not. But then throughout your presentation, I kept asking myself which actor precisely you were talking about. So if we're saying that something is morally admissible or not, then we're implying that some actor somewhere is morally responsible for behaving in a specific way. And so when you say that there's an invitation to trust, I guess my question there is, who is making that invitation? Do you think that it's the AI itself? Is it the programmer? Is it potentially the company that is using the conversational AI, which might not be the same entity that programmed the AI? And when you say that trust requires some vulnerability to being betrayed, then who is betraying if there is a lie? Is it the AI, the programmer, the company, all of the above? What are your views on that?
To the second question first, and who's going to be betrayed here? The users will be betrayed, right? Because if the AI invited users to trust and then breach the trust, then
sure. But who is betraying? Who is the betrayer?
I see. Okay, so the same questions, right? The first and second. So let's think about just forget about AI. Just think about a human-to-human interaction, okay? And just dealer and customer. Okay, and it's not an easy question to pinpoint who actually invited the trust, because even if you think about the perfectly moralistic, let's say Calvinist car dealer, the Calvinist car dealer says, I really invite you, trust me. I'm saying the lowest price is $20,000. However, it's not gonna work. It's really, so there's some degree of willingness, or you can invite the other person to trust you. However, much depends upon the context and social norms. Okay, so I invite you to trust. I'm telling you to trust, but it's not always working. And that's one thing. So in part, that does not mean that I don't think there is any responsibility and any room for responsibility. Second thing is, obviously, primarily it is company who develops the AI system, because at some point they can if they use the same strategy that we're going to use to develop a perfectly lying machine, they can choose the degree of invitation with trust, the attempt to invite the other to trust, or the amount of lying. And but what in the first part of the paper shows that some of the citations, I'm going to share the paper with you later, that in many examples, actually, the companies did not really intend the machines to lie, but it turned out that at some point, negotiation chatbots learned by itself to lie. But I think it's a different matter whether that resolves the responsibility problem. but that is just fact. And I think there are many different ways to talk about responsibility, even without some direct volition.
I have a ton of follow-up questions, but the Q&A is getting very, very busy. So I think I'll just turn it over again to Alan so that he can go to our
Very
audience.
fortunately for me, my follow-up questions are in the Q&A, so I can just read them out to you. We have 3 closely related questions in the Q&A, and as we have only 10 minutes left, I'm going to combine them. So Vivek Mishra is making a similar point to the one I was making, I guess. Why would we ever design a non-moralistic AI? He's pointing to recent publications in BEQ, arguing that the context of a lie in a negotiation is irrelevant. Shared consent of a lie doesn't necessarily make the lie okay. And relatedly, there's a question from Jose Alarcon, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, saying, in some sense, when you talk about the invitation to trust, leaving aside Rita's important questions about whether that's something an AI can do, are you just treating trust as a sort of add-on option, like electric windows or leather upholstery in a car? And in that, if you're doing that, in some sense, are you demeaning the agent in some way? And very closely related, Grant Roseboom, hi Grant, says, again, isn't there some context in which we should take a step back and ask whether there should be an invitation to trust in a given context? It's not an idle worry. In this context, he points out this isn't an idle worry. Bots played a big role, for example, in the past, spreading misinformation in social media platforms. The fact that we know that social media platforms are full of that sort of thing doesn't make it okay. Presumably, we like those media platforms to extend an invitation to trust.
Okay, thank you. Let me take the first question. So why not developing a moralistic negotiator AI? Right, that was the first question, right?
Yeah, this is related to the other two, right? It's about making sure there's an invitation to trust.
Yes, let me take the first question first. So, some of my friends told me, asked me, why did you making this claim? Do you really did you choose this is strategically, meaning that I wanted to have some thought-provoking thesis, because I'm saying that it's okay sometimes for AI to lie, but in the end, I'm not saying that. But that's not my intent. My motivation here is that in reality, people lie. And second thing is that more important thing is that moralistic negotiator is not really useful for everyone. So it's just, let me just be a utilitarian here, or any deontological perspective who takes welfare very important. Okay, so at least in the U.S., if you are a moralistic negotiator and if you are a moralistic customer, or let's say the customer is not moralist, because then even if you are a perfectly truthful, priest-like person, actually you are not really helping customers' welfare. Maybe you become
that's a long way from an argument founded on autonomy, isn't it?
So here let's
paternalistic now.
Let's in terms about the welfare here. I want to buy a car. Suppose that I'm a customer. I want to buy a car with a proper price, and then the negotiator, the car dealer wants to sell the car with the proper. So there must be some market efficiency, supply and demand here. However, the pricing signals here, typically, at least in the US, are involved with some kind of deception, not about safety issues. Okay, when you ask about it here, how about the radiator? Then the invitation of trust is there. So therefore, you are automatically invited to trust the statement about, hey, the radiator is fine, the radiator is not fine, therefore you shouldn't lie. However, in the case of a price reservation here, there's a pretty much room for deception. Without that, actually, it's not easy to arrive at a market efficiency, which is good for both parties. And second thing is that I read the paper about the recent paper. I have no offense to the author, but I disagree with their analysis. of that. This is a lie is a lie, and so suppose that I do a surprise party to my wife, and that's a lie. Why is that unethical? It's not easy to say this. So, or when I meet a colleague here, and she asked me, "How are you?" I say, "I'm fine." Actually, I'm not fine, and I have a low back pain, serious back pain. But I don't want to waste my time here. Just it's okay to lie here. So I just said I'm fine, which is a lie. Why is that unethical? So I think a lie is a lie, but under some circumstances, a lie is permissible. I'm not saying that it's ethically good to be a liar. Its character matters. That's a separate topic. I'm talking about the character of AI, which I don't think exists. So I'm a little bit more. I think have a more wriggling room to talk about when it's okay to lie. When it comes to humans, then I think Alan's point about even attempt to lie, that's a very bad idea. So that's one thing. What was the second question? I'm sorry.
Well, I think you managed to give a response to all of them in some sense. I want to give Rita a chance to ask one last question because we're close to time. So Rita, did you have a quick one?
Actually, I think there are 3 questions here that we can combine because they're all about empirical reasons why we might see the results that you found in your study. So Julian Friedland is asking, how do we know that the reason for lower AI line tolerance is because of increased trust expectation? Couldn't it be for other reasons, such as people being annoyed by the fact that they're interacting with a chatbot to begin with? And relatedly, Ethel Williams is asking, why would humans not expect AI to lie? Could it have anything to do with the fact that a chatbot interaction leaves a text record? And finally, Ruben Burga is asking if you controlled your sample population for age, and so could tell tech-savvy younger people apart from older, not so tech-savvy people.
Yes. First of all, so we did demographic checks, and we didn't see any significances there, age, gender. But however, we didn't check the backgrounds. And my idea is that typically computer scientists here at Carnegie Mellon know that computers, machines are dumb. They think machines are dumb. Okay, so probably computer scientists would not really think they are embodied to trust. But it's just ordinary people. The perception we discover is that they tend to believe that AIs are machines and machines are consistent and they never lie. That's some of the discoveries we found. Second thing is that how can we really know it was trust, right? I think that's a really important question, and we need to do a lot more surveys and experiments to see whether it is really trust that makes the difference. And one technical difficulty in doing interdisciplinary work is we have to match philosophical concept with a behavioral concept. And philosophical concept here is a trust or betrayal. Then how can you measure it? It's not easy to find exactly the same measure developed in different discipline. And the closest thing we could find and which we thought would work was upset, because there's much growing scholarship about outrage and some kind of responsive attitude, outrage or upset. So we chose upset. Some assumption, to be honest with you, there's assumption. We did not prove it was trust. Our assumption was that if you really trusted, so it's a counterfactual inference. If you really trust it, then you will be upset. So there's upset here, so therefore trust. But this is not logically true. But if it were really not upset, then it were not trust. That is true logic, right? So it is not perfectly deductive logic, but some kind of idea was there, which is that if you really trust it, you will be upset. And there's upset, so therefore we think likely there was a trust. Thank you.
That was a very impressively timed answer, Tae Wan, because
Yes.
we're right at the end of our time. Thank you very much for sharing your work with us and for a very interesting conversation. Just before we end, I'll close by advertising the next retro seminar, which takes place on the 1st of June, 2 weeks today. Joanne Kuhler, who's a professor and the director of the Institute for Ethical Leadership at Rutgers, is going to talk about Schiller and Nietzsche and the notion of resentiment and resentment, leadership and the inversion of values. So I hope to see many people there. But for today, thank you again, Tae Wan, and we'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you.